Good morning. Great to see all your bright, shiny, tanned faces out here for those of you that have been on spring break. My name is Ralph Schultz. I'm CEO of the Chamber. It's a great gathering again this morning. You're going to get a lot of information from us. We are honored to hear from the governor this morning, as we have traditionally. But we always like to start off this day or start off a gathering by just reinforcing the fact that as a chamber, our purpose is to facilitate community leadership to create economic prosperity. Assembled here in this room is that community leadership that we facilitate. You make decisions, you set agendas, you invest in your businesses, you engage in the community in such a way that you make a difference. You define this prosperous environment of this community. So we want to say thank you for your presence today. Thank you for your support of our work, and thank you for your continued engagement as leaders in the community. For the first time, our regional gross product has crossed the $100 billion mark for the first time. That's what you're doing out there. Of the 10 counties with the lowest unemployment rate in the state, in February, 7 of those were in the Nashville region. And our cost of living is 91% of the national average, while our per capita income is 114% of the national average, which translates to a 23% positive spread on discretionary income. That means you have more of your money to spend the way you wish to spend it. And that allows us to buy products, buy homes, pursue education, start a business much easier in this area than you could undertake those things elsewhere. So our momentum across Middle Tennessee is growing, and a big part of that success is the strong partnership that we have with elected officials, our mayor, our state legislators, and our governor. So now we'd like to recognize our sponsors, because this event would not be possible without them. First of all, today is presented by Frost Brown Todd, and you will hear from Tom Lee in just a moment. And we also have our pivotal partners, Delek US Holdings, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, Community Health Systems, First Tennessee, and Ryan LLC. These are partners at the highest level at the Chamber. Thank them for their support. And then we have our friends of the Chamber, Bradley Arent, Bolt Cummings, and Mission Point Health Partners. And we have our associate sponsors for the day, and they are Corrections Corporation of America and Tractor Supply Company. And finally, our supporting sponsor for the day, C3 Consulting, the Nashville Post, and our technological partner of Atiba. So thank them for their engagement, and thanks to our media partner, the Nashville Post. So thanks to all those partners for helping us make this event possible. So at this time, I'd like to invite our presenting sponsor, Frost Brown Todd, to the podium for a few remarks. Would you welcome Tom Lee, the Managing Principal of Civic Point, a government relations subsidiary of Frost Brown Todd Attorneys.
Well, good morning. Yeah, it's breakfast time. We gather together for about an hour before the day starts, a little bit like early church. I mention that because on behalf of all of us at Frost Brown Todd, 475 lawyers across now 10 cities and I think 7 states, it's our pleasure to welcome you to this gathering. We like to think, as Ralph just said, that among you we are also leaders like you. We like to think of ourselves as innovators. We've created right here in Nashville 3 businesses within our law firm that do not practice law, which, as you can imagine, makes for some interesting conversations among our partners. But it is all designed to drive innovation and, frankly, to respond to the needs of you, our friends and our clients, whether it's working in payment systems. If you move money around, you might be interested in Blackline payment systems, Whether you are a buyer or perhaps a seller in the healthcare space and you want to know about distressindex.com, which identifies opportunities for that very thing in the healthcare sector, or if you are interested in what I and my colleagues, Deborah Maggart, Mirna Tunic, and others across our platform do in the space of government relations, what we're talking about here today, affecting public policy, then Civic Point might be something you're interested in. I mentioned early service because in my faith tradition, while leadership is important, there is nothing more important than being a follower. We have a word for it, even. We call it discipleship. And Mr. John Wesley, it tips my hand a little bit about where I come from, thought that discipleship was so difficult and so important that we ought to have a method for it. It is hard to be a follower. We all want to be leaders. We've got technology out there now that makes each of every one of us a leader in our own way, where you're tweeting right now, although please don't tweet the next 2 seconds. You're tweeting right now because you want to say something, because you have an audience and you want people to hear you. You want to be a leader, and that's understandable. What I want to suggest to you today that the task of this breakfast is to be great followers. And that is something we ought to understand as businesses, because followers make teams, followers build communities, followers make great businesses. We need employees who are our colleagues and, yes, our followers. That means they need great educations to be able to do the things that we need and hope and want them to do. They need great health care, because that means they get back on the job and they're able to do that which we hope and want them to do, to keep that $100 billion figure growing that Ralph mentioned. And frankly, we need them to be able just to get where they have to go. And that requires infrastructure. Business has won the argument. Congratulations. We now have in Tennessee a prism through which every public policy issue is viewed, and that is it good for business? That question is always asked. You might ask, why doesn't it always prevail? And the answer I will submit to you is that we have no shortage of leadership. What we lack is followership. The good news is we have a terrific governor who understands and embodies this idea more than any other. And candidly, what he needs is followers. He deserves our followership because he stands for the principles that this chamber stands for and that you stand for as well. So, talking points are great, but only amateurs talk about strategy. Professionals deal in capacity. And the question is, what's our capacity for followership? That's the question we hope to engage today at this breakfast, and that's why we at Frost Brown Todd are so pleased to be the sponsors today, because we want to be not just good leaders, but in this cause, great followers. And we hope that you'll join us. Thanks, and enjoy your breakfast.
Thanks, Tom. Tom is always impactful, always informative, and sometimes entertaining as well. So, Tom, thank you. As you know, our General Assembly is in the midst of its 2015 legislative session, and at this time I'd like to ask one of the Chamber's prosperity leaders, Jenna Rose of BB&T Nashville Commercial Office, to the podium to give a quick update on a few of the Chamber's legislative priorities. Jenna?
Good morning. Thank you, Ralph. It's an honor to be here this morning as one of the Chamber's prosperity leaders, a group of member volunteers engaged in the Chamber's advocacy work. The Chamber's policy agenda is developed by our members through our annual policy survey in the fall, the research our staff does, and ultimately by the Board of Directors. Action on our agenda takes place when you, our members, share your opinions and perspectives with our elected officials through our Middle Tennessee Business Voice tool. This year, there are 18 items on the state legislative agenda and 18 on the Metro agenda. That total of 36 priorities have a direct impact on talent development through education, creating an environment where our businesses can prosper, and ensuring economic prosperity, all things that matter to our members, to our city, and to the Nashville region. Our full legislative agenda is in front of you, but let me take a few minutes to highlight a few of our highest priorities. Priorities that need your support this week and will benefit from your personal engagement. First, we support the continued implementation of a more rigorous K-12 standards that focuses on college and career readiness and an aligned assessment to measure student achievement. We believe the governor's process to review and refine our current K-12 educational standards is an appropriate way to maintain high academic standards in our state. We also believe the ACT and the Tennessee Ready Assessment are critical in measuring the student mastery of our academic standards. The business leaders in this room know we need Tennesseans to complete a post-secondary degree in order to meet our regional workforce needs. Currently, undocumented students that graduate from Tennessee high schools have to pay out-of-state tuition to attend Tennessee public colleges and universities. That adds an extra $8,000 a year to the cost of tuition and keeps these young people from becoming greater contributors to our society and economy. That's why Chamber supports state legislation that would allow undocumented students who have attended and graduated from Tennessee high schools to pay in-state tuition rates to attend our public colleges. Beyond education, the Chamber continues to advocate for legislation that makes Tennessee the best state in the country to do business. Businesses in this region are incredibly generous in how they give back to the community through charitable donations and employee volunteer hours. Increasingly, we are finding that some entrepreneurs want to incorporate their for-profit business with a specific public benefit purpose built in as part of the company's DNA. 26 states and the District of Columbia allow this type of corporation to form, which are taxed exactly the same as traditional corporations. This year, we are supporting legislation sponsored by Senator Steve Dickerson and Representative Jason Powell to allow for-profit benefit corporations to be created right here in Tennessee. We continue to oppose bills that prohibit businesses from enforcing their own policies regarding guns in the workplace, or limit the right of businesses like restaurants or shops to set and enforce policies regarding firearms. And finally, anyone who is following the 2015 mayor's race here in Nashville knows that ensuring our city remains an affordable place to live is an issue of growing importance. The Chamber is supporting a bill sponsored by Senator Jeff Yarbrough and Representative Harold Love that will help Davidson County better utilize federal tax credits to meet the growing demand for affordable housing. These are just a few highlights of the many issues the Chamber works on every day in an effort to continue the prosperity of our city and our region. Thank you.
So now that you've heard what you consider important about our legislative agenda, let's hear about how you can advocate. And to take us through that, we want to ask Chamber Board member and Vital Signs Action Team leader Mary Ann Howland to the stage to just tell you how you can advocate. Thanks.
Thank you, Ralph. And thank you, Jenna. And good morning, everybody. It's a little early for me, so only the Chamber could get me out, but promised me a free breakfast, so I said okay. So as Jenna mentioned, ensuring that the Nashville region continues to provide obtainable housing for a wide range of incomes is crucial to helping us remain competitive. Last summer, the Metro Development and Housing Authority received an unexpected tax bill of nearly $400,000 for their properties utilizing federal low-income tax credits, jeopardizing their ability to partner with the private sector to build affordable housing communities. Due to a gap in state law, Davidson County is the only county in Tennessee that is prohibited from accepting payment in lieu of taxes from private companies utilizing low-income housing tax credits. The bill has already passed the state Senate, and today we hope each of you will send an email supporting House Bill 732 in the Tennessee House of Representatives using our online Middle Tennessee Business Voice tool. This morning, Chamber members received an action alert from our CEO, Ralph Schultz, on the important issue of housing. If you find that you didn't receive this message and would like to receive future legislative action alerts, please give your business card to any Chamber member here this morning at the end of this event. In response to the action alert I received, I'm going to send a message right now. If you have a smartphone, I encourage you to check your email and follow along with me. Or if you didn't receive the message, you can still get engaged. Go to www.midtnbusinessvoice.com. The URL is also listed on the screen and at the bottom of your agenda. Okay, we're going to walk through the process together right now. So featured on the site's homepage is a list of the active issues the Chamber is monitoring on the federal, state, and local levels. The spotlight issue at the top signifies that an important vote is coming in the near future. We're showing our support for affordable housing this morning. When I click More, at the bottom of the issue, an entire web summary opens and includes a description of the issue in more detail, explains why it's important for business, and where it is in the legislative process. Once I've read the summary, it is time for me to contact my elected official by clicking Take Action. Because each user is individually registered, your personalized list of elected officials is generated based on your zip code. A page appears that allows me to quickly send a message. The first time I used the tool, I entered my name and address on the right-hand side. My device saved this information for future uses, making this a one-time entry. Users always have the option to send the pre-written message crafted by Chamber staff or to edit and personalize a message. After reviewing the message, I simply click Send Message. A page then appears that confirms my message has been sent and lets me know who received it. This is how easy it is to be involved and engaged. Governor Haslam and other distinguished guests from the House and the Senate, check your email right now. No. You have a message from me in your inbox. Now that you've seen how easy it is to send a message and how quickly it can be done, I look forward to seeing what our send rate will be today on this very timely issue, and looking forward to Governor Haslam's response to my email. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Ann. And Mary Ann's very engaged in our particular policy agenda at the Chamber, and appreciate her leadership on our board. We're going to take a few minutes here to finish breakfast, and then we will be back with our featured speaker of the day. So take just a few minutes and be ready to go in just a few minutes when we come back together. Tracy Guarino, the CEO and president of ForceX Inc., as well as being a prosperity leader, to introduce our speaker today. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Ralph, and welcome to our 2015 Governor's Address. Governor Bill Haslam truly understands what it takes to create economic prosperity. Earlier this year, Tennessee was named State of the Year by Business Facilities Magazine for an unprecedented second year in a row because of the capital investment and new jobs created in our state. This distinction resulted not only from Governor Haslam's commitment to removing roadblocks from businesses, but also his active work to create economic prosperity. Nearly 225,000 new private sector jobs have been created in Tennessee in the last 4 years. His continued commitment to education, significantly through his unwavering support of academic standards, has helped Tennessee become the fastest improving state in the nation in National Assessment of Educational Progress. He is committed to improving college access and success, increasing educational attainment rates, and enhancing workforce development efforts through public and private partnerships. Creating the Tennessee Promise has distinguished our state as a leader in workforce training. We especially appreciate and value the excellent working relationship that Governor Haslam has with the Nashville Chamber. Governor Haslam and his staff are always willing to listen to our ideas and concerns as we represent you, our members. For that, we are very thankful. It is my distinct honor to introduce and welcome to the podium the 49th Governor of Tennessee, Bill Haslam.
Thanks, Tracy. Thank you. Well, good morning and thanks. Thank you. Please have a seat. Thanks so much. Tracy, thank you. That was very nice. Marianne, thank you for loading up my inbox this morning. You'll have my reply soon. Hey, I really appreciate you coming this morning. I realize that, like Marianne, a lot of you all are not morning people, and this wouldn't be your first thing to do, would be to get up and hear a politician this morning. But we will try to make this as helpful and maybe even as entertaining as possible and make it worth your time. I think you all have heard the Groucho Marx story where he had been up and he'd been talking about himself for a long time, about 45 minutes, much like a politician would. But after about 45 minutes, he stopped and said, "How rude of me. I'm so sorry to keep talking about myself. Let's quit talking about me and talk about you. Tell me, what do you think about me?" Which is typical, right, of what happens when people are in elected office. But I would actually like to start this morning talking about you and talking about Nashville and the Nashville Chamber and, quite frankly, how grateful I am for it. First, on the legislative front, and I know you've already been through that some, but I truly appreciate your help on what I think are the critical issues facing us. One would be to help Tennessee maintain high and rigorous academic standards. And while this is unfortunately turned into a political debate, in reality, it's a discussion about the future of Tennessee, and I believe that's as strong as I can. There is not a more critical issue facing us as a state than getting education right. Yesterday, the superintendents of the 4 large school districts came to see me, but to be honest with you, any of the school districts could have come to us, but they were concerned about funding and the state's funding for education. But we quickly turned the conversation into a conversation about educational outcomes. At the end of the day, what we're all concerned about is better outcomes and for our students of all ages K through 12, because as much as there is an incredible economic growth in Tennessee and particularly in Nashville right now, the long-term challenge is real. I don't talk to any business anywhere that the conversation doesn't immediately turn to workforce. I had two conversations with different businesses yesterday. They're looking at locating here. And within 30 seconds, both of those conversations went to, well, here's my real concern. It's about the quality of your workforce. And it's why we focus so hard on K-12. It's actually why we introduced the Tennessee Promise. And I appreciate the introduction. We're the very first state to ever promise every high school graduate 2 years of community college or technical school free of charge. And by the way, for any adult in Tennessee, no matter what age you are, you can now go to technical school, one of our colleges of applied technology, absolutely free, regardless of your age, if you're an adult in Tennessee. Again, we're the only state that can do that. But we're doing that so that we can tell the workforce, no, we actually will, those workers you need, whether they're engineers or IT professionals or welders or nurses or truck drivers, whatever it is, we'll have those workers. But we have to get there first. And it's why I'm coming back, it's why the K-12 academic standards matter so much. You all have heard me say this before, but it's the best example I can give, so I keep giving it. When 70% of the students who go to our community colleges need remedial work when they get there, it doesn't matter what we provide them in terms of post-secondary opportunities. If they're not prepared when they get there, it's not about college access, it's about college success. And success means being prepared when you get there, and that's not going to happen your freshman year, whether it be 2-year school or 4-year school or technical school. So the battle over academic standards, while it's a very political one, needs to be a very practical one. It needs to be about what are we doing to prepare Tennessee for the challenges that lie ahead of us. So I couldn't be more grateful. Nashville Chamber was actually fighting this battle long before I ever engaged in it, before I got here. And the battle has twists and turns and morphs into different shapes, but it still remains one about setting high standards, because not too long ago, while 70% of those students needed remedial work when they got to community college, we were rating about 90% of our kids as proficient at grade level. Okay, well, there's no way you could have 90% of your students proficient at grade level, and then 70% of them need remedial work when they get to community college. So the discussion we're having about standards is real, and it's very practical, and your support has been tremendous. Also want to say a word about your support of our Insure Tennessee program, a program to help 250,000 plus Tennesseans who don't have insurance be able to achieve that. We obviously didn't have legislative success when that first came up. The bill is still alive in a slightly different form, and we continue to see the real need to have Tennesseans get the right coverage at the right place at the right time. And a lot of people have come to me and said, well, I don't get why you'd be pushing this. Everybody gets health coverage if you need it, right? You just show up in the emergency room and get it. But there's a lot of healthcare professionals I see just looking around this room, and they could all say, well, they'll get it, but that's not the best place for them in terms of quality care, and it's definitely not the best place for any of us in terms of the cost of care. And so there are better ways to approach that than we are doing, and we have a way in Tennessee that will cost Tennesseans zero in terms of the added cost to the general fund. It's a way that we can get out of if we decide it doesn't work, and we have the assurance of a Supreme Court ruling, a Tennessee Attorney General's opinion, and a letter from the Secretary of HHS. And it also is a plan that brings market-based principles to health care and on both sides, on the user side and also with the provider side as well. So we continue to think it's the right thing. Ideas like this don't ever come easy, and so we don't take the fact that it didn't pass the first time as ultimate failure, and we will keep trying to find a way to make that happen. The last thing the last thing I'll say is this, and then I'll stop and we'll talk about whatever you'd like to. People always ask me, what's the ultimate challenge for a governor? And it's really the same no matter where you are and when you're the executive of a government entity. The primary struggle is always about budget. It just always is. In Tennessee, if you look at it this way, basically every year, I'm going to way oversimplify, but we have a $30 billion budget, okay? But every year we get about 300 million, 250, 300 million in new revenue every year. But our costs just in health care, which is basically TennCare and then health insurance for our employees, and education, K-12 and higher ed, go up more than that 300 million. So before we've done anything, before we've paid an additional, given an employee a raise, paid an additional cost to maintain a building, done any other things that we do as government, put in a new program for DCS, anything else, we're basically upside down. So we always have to go through the process every year of trying to realign government of what we pay and how we do that. That process is never fun, and people say, I can't understand why you're cutting this. Well, we're doing that because we have to ultimately free up more money for the things that drive the state's budget, primarily education, which is a priority for ours, and health care, where we're trying really hard to maintain the growth of the cost curve to where it doesn't take over our entire budget. So we filed our initial budget here, I guess, 7-8 weeks ago. We'll file an amended budget in the next 10 weeks, which you do, the next 10 days. Don't panic, all those who are thinking, the legislature's going to be here 10 more weeks. In the next 10 days, and then hopefully we'll come up with another budget that meets the needs of the state. The good news, I think, in the state right now is the economy is doing well in Tennessee. Our tax revenues have been strong this year. We had the reverse last year where revenues were short of our projections, and so at the last minute we were having to decide things that we had said we were going to do that we would not be able to do, which last year primarily was around salaries, both for state employees and teachers, which were some of the last things that we wanted to cut, but given the circumstances had to. This year, we're not in that circumstance. Revenues for the state looks a lot better, and so we have the chance to approach things in a very different way. All right, I'll stop. That was kind of introduction. I've saved, Ralph asked me to save a decent amount of time for questions, and I would love to talk about whatever you would want to talk about. The only rule is your question has to be a question. But other than that, we'll do we'll talk about whatever you'd like. I see some mics here, or you can just stand up and talk real loud. Anybody want to be first? All right.
Brenda Payne with the Hendersonville Area Chamber. Governor Haslam, thank you for being here today. My question follows on the heels of the 55-minute drive that I had in from Gallatin, actually, this morning. So I wonder, as The discussion about raising the gas tax continues along. How are we going to assure that local governments are going to have the kind of funding that they need to enhance their mass transit systems?
So really good question. And by the way, I think we have 2 or 3 really big issues that face Tennessee, and you maybe feel them more acutely right here in the middle Tennessee area, but they're true across the state. And I would put those: public education and then public transportation, and how we're going to solve some of our transportation issues. You feel those more acutely here because of all the growth in the greater Nashville area, but it's true a lot of places. So on transportation, here's the challenge. We fund, whether it be the roads or bridges or public transportation or a lot of our greenways and bike trails, all basically off of the gas tax that you pay when you go out and buy a gallon of gas or diesel fuel if you have a diesel fuel car. The issue is this. Asphalt and heavy engineering costs continue to increase and increase. Gasoline, on the other hand, you're getting better and better mileage all the time. I'm willing to take this bet, and I'll bet the whole room, no matter what it is. I'll pay for breakfast if I'm wrong, for everybody. But I think about what you drove 15 years ago and what you drive now, and I'm willing to bet you get at least 20% better gas mileage than you did then, at least, okay? And probably more than that, which is terrific. It's terrific for your pocketbook. It's terrific for the environment. But in terms of how we fund roads, we've taken a hit, because it basically means you're paying 20% less or 25% less to drive on those same roads than you did before. So the question is, what do we do about it? People are not always real excited to have a tax increase. If I raise the hand for how many people want a tax increase, some of you might out of a spirit of community goodwill, but nobody really wants that. So what we have to do is justify why we're doing that. And part of that is around some of the public transportation needs, and part of it is just around basic roads maintenance that we have to do. I won't ask you if you saw a pothole on your way into work this morning. Some of those roads aren't ours. But the challenge in just basic funding is there. So we decided not to do it this year. At some point in time in the near future, next year, sometime, it'll happen while we're in office, and basically have this budget cycle and 3 more after that. We have to do something to address that in Tennessee. And I think our challenge is to do 2 things: to come up with something that's more than just a Band-Aid. A lot of people say they want to do it, but when they realize that what the cost looks like to do it, they kind of swallow twice and say, well, maybe not. So for us to come up with what that funding formula would look like that's more than just a Band-Aid, and second, have very specific needs, like if we do this, here's the projects that would happen without it in a priority order. So we've got billions of dollars of projects that aren't funded. That's not the issue. The issue is what would we do if we passed an increase that we couldn't do without it. The public transit issues are connected to that, because that's partly how those are typically federal funded, state funded, and then some local. But our piece of that would come out of those same gas tax dollars. And so finding the funding to do that will be part of the challenge as well. As you know, we're working on the task force from a state level on how we do that. A lot of the particular housing issues end up being a lot more local issues in terms of how the funding has historically worked on those. So there are things that we're working on with that task force to develop some specific plans around that. Ideally, with most housing units, housing issues, whether it be with seniors or any of the other populations that face some specific challenges, those are going to be locally led, and we're going to come alongside of them to help where we can with some of the funding that we get from the federal government.
Good morning, Governor. There's some things going on at our University of Tennessee. It fits into many of our hearts, and I know to some of your family's hearts as well. There are things going on there involving lawsuits against the University of Tennessee, the management there. It even comes down to this thing where they are wanting to take away the moniker of the Lady Vols. And is there anything that the governor can do? Can the governor get involved behind the scenes, which is where you like to work better than out front, to try to get this team of people back on the right track at and save our university?
Well, appreciate that question. I'll start with the most visible of those issues around the Lady Vols nickname and take that out. wasn't involved in that decision, and I'll be honest with you, I won't get involved in that decision. I think there's certain things that the governor can and should be involved in, and a university deciding how they're going to brand their sports teams does not feel to me like something the governor should get involved in. A lot of people have encouraged me to. It's just not, I just don't think that's what the governor's role is. I remember talking to somebody before I came in this office. I went and met with a group of governors, and there, if I could kind of synthesize all their advice into one piece, it would be this: that the governor should only do what only the governor can do. And there's certain issues that face the state that come in that I feel like that's my role to jump into. How the University of Tennessee brands its sports teams, and I'm not minimizing that. I realize there's a lot of passion around that issue for a lot of people, but that just doesn't feel to me like something that the governor should get involved in on that issue. You know, universities, and I see some folks in here from Vanderbilt, I see a few folks from Belmont, I see people from a lot of places. Universities are incredibly complex entities. Incredibly, and the constituencies are very broad, from students to alumni to faculty to donors, et cetera. And at the end of the day, what I've been trying to keep our universities focused on is, you know, to keep the main thing the main thing. And their main thing is to provide educational opportunities and training opportunities to our population. That's what we put our funding in there for, is the expectation out of that. So, like I said, my primary focus with the University of Tennessee, I was at Austin Peay yesterday for the installation of the new president, Dr. White. I'll be at Tennessee Tech on Friday. My emphasis with those, our two-year schools as well, is remember what your mission is. Remember what your mission is. And I get that to me is the appropriate role of the governors, to drive that down so that they're playing the role that they have to make our whole state work. So we actually had an encouraging sign yesterday, and that the Senate Health Subcommittee passed it out 3-2, which is movement, and it'll go to the full Health Committee, where we think we have a good shot to have that moved as well. After that, the path gets a little I'm just being as honest as I can, it gets a little trickier. I think our role is to continue to keep this discussion alive and to try to keep answering all the questions that came up. One of the big questions that came up was about, you know, what happened? We don't think we can get out of this, even though they're saying we can. Well, we think we have kind of irrefutable evidence that if the state of Tennessee decides this doesn't work, that we can pull out of it. Like I said, we have a Supreme Court ruling, an Attorney General's opinion, and a letter from HHS saying that specifically we can. Other folks were saying, well, we don't have it in writing, but our hands were kind of tied by the sense of last year's General Assembly had passed legislation that wouldn't allow us to move forward without their approval. Well, the way the waiver process works with HHS, moving forward without their approval means we can't move forward until we can't go submit that waiver to them until we get their approval. So we kind of had a little bit of a catch-22 situation going on there, but I think we can get those assurances out of HHS ultimately to do that. So all I know to keep doing is say, tell me what your concern is and answer it. I mean, I think the reality is that there's a lot of political concern around the issue. I mean, let's face facts, we have a state that's overwhelmingly red. We have a legislature that's 28-5 in the Senate and 73-26 in the House Republican. And a lot of those folks ran against the Affordable Care Act and ran against Obamacare. And I've said 100 times, I don't like the way they did the plan either. I also don't like the way they planned it, the way they passed it. And I think the way that they've done all that has reverberated to cause people like us who are trying to work things out problems along the way. So I got major issues with what they did and with how they did it. But the fact comes back to us, like, okay, we have an opportunity to do something in Tennessee that I think does put some market-based principles into place, that does cover people and doesn't cost the state of Tennessee any money. And long term, I'm convinced will save us money. So I don't know anything to do except to keep taking the arguments one by one and answering them. I will say this. I think it's important that people understand, well, this isn't just Haslam's plan. But that there are a lot of people from a lot of different walks of life in Tennessee that think this is the right thing to do. And ultimately, like I said, this is a hard idea. I mean, if you're a legislator, to vote for this is hard. I mean, it just is for a lot of reasons, because there's passions on either side. But I think it's also a case where we keep making our case, and maybe it doesn't happen initially, but we figure out a way to make it happen down the road. To do that, we need to keep having voices from people who say, this is important. This is important to me. It's important to our business and to our state. I think Ralph is getting up because he's going to give me the hook. So let me just say this. Thank you all very much. I think I've done this every year since I've been in office, and I try to do the same thing in Knoxville and Memphis and Chattanooga as well, for this reason. Our business community in Tennessee, I'll say the obvious, is incredibly important because you provide employment and other things, but you help define for the rest of us what the needs of the state are. So my encouragement to you would be this, to make your voice heard. That I used to be in your seat. Before I ran for mayor in Knoxville, before I was governor, I was an active member of the chamber and came, and I thought, I'll stay a little politically involved because that matters, but I didn't really engage in the process. And for our state to be strong, it helps us if folks like you will really engage in the process and let your voice be heard. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here, and Marianne, thank you for my early morning email.
Before we all depart, number one, and you hear this from us so often that you may be numb to it, but the prosperity that we enjoy in Middle Tennessee at this moment is no accident. It is the product of at least 25 years of conscious, intentional planning and effort to establish an environment of prosperity that allows you as a business people to create the prosperity. You take risks, you make investments, you increase employment, you change your business and adapt your business to the new marketplace. The combination of that environment and your willingness to lead in your businesses is part of that intentional growth that comes from in this area. Please continue that intentional engagement. And then the second thing has to do with public policy, and this is something that I think is really important. Public policy doesn't create prosperity. You're creating prosperity, but it does define an environment that will either encourage prosperity or discourage prosperity. We elect public officials to make judgments on our behalf that help establish that prosperous environment. Tom Lee started this theme with the comments he made this morning. We have a leader who is undertaking innovatively to establish public policy that encourages prosperity. We've seen in the debate over higher standards for education. We've seen in the debate over Insure Tennessee. We've seen in the debate yesterday on the guns bills, particularly as they relate to your ability to make rules in your workplace that you can then enforce with your employees. We have seen consistently the need for legislators to be held accountable to your beliefs. They do not at this moment, and I think Curry Todd's comments yesterday illustrated this, they do not at this moment believe that you will hold them accountable, for their votes. It is absolutely vital. The chambers, Brenda, Paul, Margot, all the chambers can represent you, but there are some times where your voice has to be a direct part of the discussion. And on these big issues, that is often the case. So I'm going to ask you to do two things. Number one, use the business voice. We have tried to structure that as a vehicle that makes it as easy as possible for those legislators to hear from you. But secondly, when it comes election time, hold those legislators accountable for the judgments they've made. Don't treat your votes and don't treat your voice casually when it comes to election time. Engage in a process that holds legislators accountable before you make campaign contributions, before you have a concluding conversation with a candidate. Hold them accountable for the judgments they've made along the way. Higher standards are important to you. Insure Tennessee is important to you. The guns legislation as it affects your ability to control the environment in your workplace is important to you. Hold these legislators accountable before you make contributions and before you cast votes and when you speak publicly on their behalf. So, in conclusion, we are building some structure, as we have with Business Voice, around the opportunity for you to hold legislators accountable. But that structure will be meaningless unless you personally participate. The governor is providing leadership. Jeff Yarborough, yesterday in the Senate, helped reignite the conversation on Insure Tennessee, which for many reasons is a positive move for this state going forward. As Jeff Yarborough has taken some leadership, as the governor has taken leadership, we need now to support that reignition of this discussion. So in this next couple of weeks, we're going to need you to speak out and say that we intend to hold our legislators accountable for their votes on Insure Tennessee. Is Jeff Yarborough here? Jeff? Okay, great. Jeff, thank you. I have to, we've been working very closely with John Ray Clemens. John Ray, are you still here as well? He had to leave also on some other issues. But thank you for the leadership of bringing this back to the front for discussion. With that, we are concluded. Thank you for your intentional leadership.